Hi, Claiborne Patrick here. Welcome to Don't Forget to Laugh. A husband says to his wife, he says, I hear you've been telling everyone that I'm an idiot. The wife says, well, I didn't realize it was a secret. Okay, so a 92-year-old man has an 18-year-old wife. He goes to his doctor and says, Doc, he says, I need your opinion on something. He says, my 18-year-old wife is pregnant. The doctor says, I'm going to tell you a story. The doctor says, there was a hunter on the plains of Africa. One morning he was in such a rush to go hunting, he grabbed an umbrella instead of a shotgun. But while he was out on the plains, he sees a lion, raises the umbrella, pulls the trigger. The lion falls dead. The 90-year-old man says, well, doc, that's impossible. Someone else must have shot the lion. The doc says, my point exactly. A man is lying on his deathbed. His wife is sitting right next to him. And he says, before I die, he says, I have to confess. He says, I've cheated on you our entire marriage. All those nights when I said I was working late, I was with other women. Not just one woman, but with dozens of women. She calmly looks at him and says, I know. Why do you think I gave you the poison? So a husband has had an intimacy problem for years, and he used to make love to his wife with a fake penis. And one day his wife actually finds it, and she comes to him and she says, explain this. He says, explain the kids. So that was a man, he had 6 kids. He was so proud of this accomplishment, he started calling his wife mother of 6 against her objection. Well, one night they were at a party, and he looked and figured, oh, it's time to go. So at the top of his voice, he yells out, mother of 6, is it time to go? She is so irritated at this that she yells back at the top of her voice saying, anything for you, father of 4. Wife gets so mad at husband, she packs his bags and tells him to get out. And as he's walking out, she yells out, she says, I hope you die a slow, long, painful death. So he turns around and says, so you want me to stay? In the middle of the night, wife is dreaming. She wakes up shouting, get up, get out, my husband's back. Man jumps up, jumps out the window, ends up hurting himself. Then he realizes, damn, I am the husband. Man jumps in the shower just as his wife is getting out of the shower. The doorbell rings. She grabs a towel, she wraps herself in the towel, she runs downstairs to answer the door. She opens the door and it's Bob, the neighbor. And before she could say a word, Bob says, I will give you $800 to drop that towel. She thought about it for a second. She dropped the towel. After standing in front of Bob naked for a few seconds, Bob hands her the $800 and he leaves. She retowels, runs back upstairs, and her husband says, hey, who was that? And she was like, oh, that was Bob, the neighbor. And he says, great. He says, did Bob happen to mention anything about the $800 that he owes me? Okay, wife sends husband to the store for cigarettes. Husband gets to the store, discovers that the store is closed. So he decides to go to the nearest local neighborhood bar to use their vending machine. Well, while he's in there, he sees this beautiful woman at the end of the bar. He goes and starts a conversation with her. They have a few drinks, a few laughs, and he ends up back at her apartment. Well, after they've had their fun, the husband realizes that it is late. He looks at his watch and realizes it is 3 a.m. And he's like, oh my God, my wife is going to kill me. So he asks the lady, he says, do you have any talcum powder? And she says, yes. Gives him a talcum powder. He takes the talcum powder, puts it on his hand, dusts his hands off, and he leaves. Well, sure enough, when he gets home, his wife is standing in the doorway, pissed. She says, where the hell have you been? He says, well, honey, I went to the store, and the store was closed, and decided to go to the bar to use a vending machine. He says, I met this beautiful woman. I ended up in her bed. And she says, yeah, right. Let me see your hands. So he shows her hands, and she sees that he has powder on his hands. She says, you're a damn lie. You've been shooting pool again. The moral of the story is always tell your wife the truth. She won't believe you anyway. At least your conscience will be clear. Woman playing golf. She hits a golf ball into the woods. She goes into the woods in search of a golf ball. She runs across this frog that's caught in a trap. And the frog says, sir, if you would but release me from this trap, I will grant you 3 wishes. So she releases the frog from the trap. The frog says, but your wishes come with a condition. The condition is for every wish I grant you, your husband receives 10 times the amount of that same wish. She says she was fine with it. He says, okay, well, what's your first wish? She said, my first wish is to be the most beautiful woman in the world. He says, again, remember, your husband received the same wish 10 times over, which means he would be an Adonis. Women would flock to him. She says, I'm fine with that because I'll be the most beautiful woman in the world and he'll only have eyes for me. Poof, she's the most beautiful woman in the world. He says, what about your second wish? She said, my second wish is I wish to be the richest woman in the world. He says, again, remember, your husband received 10 times the amount of that same wish, which means he would be the wealthiest man in the world. She says, I'm fine with it. She's the richest woman in the world. He says, what about your third wish? She says, I wish for a small heart attack.